Hi, welcome to Gun Stuff. I'm Scott Kiefner. Today we bring you the SAR K2 45. The SAR K2 45 is a steel frame pistol. It's chambered in .45 caliber. It has a 14+1 capacity, and it's a double action, single action pistol. To start off, we'll talk about the slide. The slide is a stainless slide. It comes in stainless brush finish, and you can get it in black as well. It has a 3-dot target sight on here that is fully adjustable for windage and elevation. Has a loaded chamber indicator, and it also has a loaded chamber window. So I like the windows myself. It's on several modern guns. I like to be able to look down in there sometimes, and when you're shooting in daylight, shooting competition, and this is kind of a competition gun, it makes it a little easier to be able to check that loaded indicator when you're at the high ready. So if you don't have time, if it's at night, you can always check the loaded chamber indicator that's on the side of the slide right here by the ejection port. Moving on to the lower is steel as well. So this is a 2.5 pound gun. So this thing can absorb recoil like nobody's business, but it's all steel. So this thing is also going to be able to take an enormous beating. You'll be able to shoot this thing for quite some time. It has a full pick rail on front for you to add any light laser combo that you choose. Has a generous trigger guard up in the front for you to get up into the trigger, whether you're wearing gloves or anything else. Has a bevel piece up in here that you can see. It's actually beveled up into the frame for you to be able to get up in there. And with the bevel that's on here as well, when you're in the high rated position, ready to shoot, and the timer's about ready to go off, or whether it's competition or duty or anything like that, it slides into the trigger well very easy. Because of the bevels that are cut into this. So again, this is a double action, single action firearm, and the double action is probably about 7 pounds, and the single action is probably about 3 pounds. Single action breaks very clean. Again, it has a steel trigger, which I love. It doesn't have any of the trigger safeties like a lot of the newer generation polymer guns, stuff like that, where you have the little lever in there. So this, once you interface with this, once you get your finger on that trigger, it's a nice steady pull all the way to the back. You don't have any other little pieces wiggling around in there. So it makes for a really good trigger engagement. It has large controls on here. The controls are on the right side. They are not ambidextrous, they are not swappable. The only thing that is swappable is the magazine release, but this has very large controls for you to get to if you're running gloves or it's cold or anything like that. It has texture grips on here, which is, the texturing is just about right. I like the texturing on the grips. Gives a nice tight grip on it, not too pokey, not too scratchy or anything like that, just enough to get a good grip on there. And then you also have your checkering on the back, and then you also have the checkering on the front strap as well. So there's some grooves cut in here that give you a nice purchase on the firearm. One of the other things I like about this is it's not just style, but it's also for protection, is this big beaver tail. I love the firearms that have these really big beaver tails, because I run with a very high grip. So when I grip my pistol, my hand usually goes up and around the beaver tail of the gun. So if you're real high up there in the tang and your hand goes up over the top, you usually get chewed up a little bit. So with something like this, with this really big beaver tail on there, one, I think it looks really cool when they have on there, but two, they protect my hands. At the end of the day, my hands aren't chewed up from shooting. It also comes with two 14-round steel mags, and as many of you know, I like the steel mags. They feed faster, they drop easier. So as soon as you hit the mag release on these things, they fall out, and you got to be ready to do your magazine change in a hurry. So we took this thing out, we put a bunch of rounds through it, and I got to tell you, I absolutely love this gun. This thing is a beast. This thing shoots great. I didn't make a whole lot of sight adjustments on it, but when I was shooting and holding my grip and holding my target. I was getting nice tight groups out of this thing. So this is going to be a really great competition gun. If I'm not mistaken, they are probably going to be bringing another version of this called the K2 Sport in 2020. Hopefully that may be released at SHOT, but it's going to be chambered in 9mm as well. So right now this is a 45. If you find the right load that this thing likes, I think this thing would be an extremely great target pistol. So with the grips and the big beaver tail on here, when I was holding this gun, I was able to get a really high, tight purchase on this pistol. So it made it feel like I really was in control. But then as soon as you start sending rounds down range at a high rate of speed, you know that the weight of this gun helps to manage and mitigate all of the recoil. We always try to go to lighter, slimmer guns when we're going for concealed carry, stuff like that, you know, because you don't want to carry around a whole lot of weight. You don't want to feel that at the end of the day. But when you start getting into your competition guns, you're seeing that the trend is starting to go back the other way. They're starting to go heavier, and this is the reason why, because this thing can eat recoil all day. We absolutely love this. You have when you kick this thing back into the single action only, this thing is about a 2.5 to 3 pound trigger pull, and I would probably err more on the 2.5 side. But this thing, the trigger break on it was great, and it was nothing. As soon as I thought about pulling the trigger, the gun was going off. So this thing handled excellent when we're out on the range. So you take this, remove the magazine, clear the weapon, make sure it's clear. So what you're going to do is you're going to take this, there's a little detent right here. You're just going to be pushing that in. So this isn't very big, so it might be a little difficult to get to. It's not very big, but it's not very big because they're trying to keep it slimmed down on this side. So you're just going to take this and you're going to pull it back just a little bit. It only goes back maybe 1/4 inch to a little, maybe 3/8 of an inch. And then this will pop out, and this is a very tight tolerance. This gun is machined at very, very close tolerances. So take the magazine and push it on the back side. So that's one tip that's going to help you get that, so you don't have to smash your fingers to pieces like we did trying to figure it out. So you take that magazine, pop it back out of there, and you're going to take and pull the pin, lay it down. You're going to take the slide it off, and you're going to maintain control of the guide rod and spring, because this is not a captured guide rod and spring, so this can fly away on you. So you're going to lift up the spring, pull it out, then you can disassemble the spring and guide rod. On the slide, you're just going to lift up the barrel, slide it forward a little bit, and then lift up and pull out the back. Then of course you can clean everything. On the lower there's nothing else to do here except get in here and clean and spray everything out. One thing I do want to show you on this particular pistol is that there are the little notches right here. So just to show you where this notch is, so when this is sitting in the slide, this piece right here, this little notch, is what sits onto here and locks that from coming out. So you have to slide this back to where it lines up with this notch, and then this pin will be able to be pulled out of the frame. So this is the little notch you're looking for to line up with, and it only has to go back maybe 1/4 of an inch, but you just gotta kind of fill it out, because it's not marked on the slide. There's no markings or a place for you to line anything up. So you're kind of doing it blind, but the reason that you really can't see it is because the way that they design this frame and slide combination. So this slide fits inside of the frame. Okay, so most of your newer generation guns, the slide is on the outside. It wraps around the outside and pinches from the outside the entire frame of the gun, and usually have little metal prongs sticking up. Well, on this firearm here, the rails go all the way up the inside of the gun, and then what attaches the upper to the frame itself is where the rails are on the outside of this slide. So typically when you're cleaning your newer modern style pistols, things like that, these rails are usually on the inside. So one thing that does is it makes it a little easier to clean and get all that grit and stuff out of there. So because they're right there exposed, easy to hit it with a toothbrush or anything and clean all that stuff out. But when you're lining this up to put this back together, it has to start right here. So the marriage between the upper and lower starts right at the front here. So not like others where it slides on back here and then can be mated up. So we're gonna go ahead and reassemble this. You're gonna take the barrel, after you clean it and oil it, you're gonna slide in, then slide it back and it's gonna lock into place. You're gonna take your spring and guide rod, reinsert it, and on the end of the guide rod, there's a little nipple on here, on the end of it, and they were gracious enough to put a little indentation in here, a little notch, so that this will seat inside of the locking lug here. So when you slide this back, on some firearms, you have to pinch and hold this in position till you get the slide mated to the lower or to the frame. But on this one here, it sits in here and it just kind of locks in there and sits there. So you don't really have to apply pressure to it. You just have to maintain it so that it doesn't pop off and fly out of there. So we're going to take here again. The marriage of the two is going to start way out on the end here because it's the slide rails go the continuous length of the slide. Going to pull it in, and once you get it to this position here, once you are looking at it, you can see through this window exactly where this little notch right here is going to mate up. So you'll be able to see right to where you can bring it back to exactly where you need it. Slide this in, click it in, let the slide go forward. Now we're going to go ahead and rack it. We're going to pull the trigger. We're going to go ahead and rack the slide again. We're going to wait. We're going to let the trigger out and feel the reset, and then we're going to pull the trigger again to ensure that the firearm goes off. And then since this one has a safety, we're going to go ahead and cock it, let go, take the safety off, and try and pull the trigger, and that is a proper functions check for a double action, single action. And during this time, also don't forget to service your magazines. Your magazines have little holes in them for indicators to let you know exactly how full they are at certain, this one has 10 and 14 round increments on here. So dirt, debris and stuff can get inside of here, and that can malfunction your magazines with gunk and things that get inside of there. So it gives your magazines a little bit longer life, and also it'll give them a faster, smoother feed when you start to shooting fast with this gun. So overall, we love this gun and we hope you do too, and we'll see you next time at Gun Stuff.